two different shooting locations, but right near each other. In all, there were 12 women and one man killed in one house. That is a lot of killing and not what we would normally see here.
I'm Sarah Ferris, true crime podcast producer.
And I'm Catherine Schweid, former head of the FBI's active shooter program.
And you're listening to Stop the Killing. We were just talking before we hit record that we haven't actually done an international case this season. So you're about to rectify that. Tell us what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, because, Sarah and I, this is all we talk about. Other people talk about what their kids are doing in school or how college is going or what vacation we're going to take. And Sarah and I get on the horn and all we talk about is murder. That's sad. That's a sad statement.
I know. I think if we lived closer to each other, we'd have a lot more fun. Like when we do get together for CrimeCon, we actually can have like a normal conversation and a normal relationship that is
a good point.
Time pressured.
Yeah. You know what? I'm with you. I'm slated to come to CrimeCon in London in June.
Yay.
And also to go to CrimeCon in Denver in September.
True. That's true. We can actually announce that now, I think, officially, can't we?
So you all listening should come and join us because we're really fun in person.
We don't just talk about murder, but we can if that's what you want to talk about.
Right.
Oh, right. And if you are coming, do let us know because we love to meet our listeners and we have some incredible conversations with people.
Oh my gosh. I feel like when I last was in London, oh my gosh, I had so much fun. It was like endless hanging out. Just for 2 days, just hanging out, talking to people and listening and learning and interacting. I had so much fun. And I loved when I would be a few minutes late to the podcast table and I'd get there and somebody would be standing there and they'd like, oh, I was waiting for you, which is really sweet. But they're so listening to everything and contributing. That's the part that's fascinating. Everybody has their own stories and I love them contributing their stories to add to our world.
I know. And we had it's not just the people that come as well, but we always have like crazy, you don't know where you're going to go have dinner. It always becomes this collection of people that you end up going out for dinner with. Yeah. And one night we ended up for dinner with, I don't know, we had like half a table of FBI with you and people. And then we had Madison McGee from Ice Cold Case, which is a huge podcast where she's searching to solve her dad's murder. And we had Laura Richards from Crime Analyst sitting there and everybody's brains connected. Oh, and of course, our friend Cherry from Crimepedia, who now works in law enforcement. So there was brains trust that kind of was helping Madison as well and giving lots of legal advice. So many great things come out of CrimeCon and we would love to see you. Yeah, absolutely.
It's so productive, like you said. I mean, here we are with Madison talking to her about solving the real situation of a missing and murdered, person.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, talking of international and jet
drop
setting
a commercial
around,
there, right?
No, I know
it is kind of an issue, but it is. I think the thing for me that's really fun. I know people don't see that word as ever fitting in, but for me, it's interesting because as everybody who lives outside the United States knows, we just in the States live in our little bubble. And think that the whole world, doesn't happen and doesn't impact us. And it's always important for me when I travel outside and, I'm talking to some, and you know who you are. I'm talking to some other podcasters who are from Scotland and I'm looking over at Sarah to get an English translation. You know who you are, Scottish murders. But there's, I'm talking to different people and, it's a very much get that it's the whole world. It's the whole world and it's not just us. And we have our own problems here in the States and we have our own solutions in the States, but everybody else deals with their own challenges too. And different countries have different challenges in part because they have different laws, they have different customs, they have different, criminal enterprises, they have different threats. So it's fascinating for me to hear, like, for example, if something was happening outside the United States, truthfully, it's more likely that there's a potential for an explosion or bombing. This is my FBI hat talking. than there is inside the United States. Not that it doesn't happen, not that they don't try. Also, outside the United States, more often, there's more than one perpetrator inside the United
Ooh.
States. Yeah, inside the United States,
Sorry,
we have a
but
lot
why
of
have we never had
lone
this
people.
conversation before? This is freaking dropping diamonds. Okay, so
You never asked me. We never talk, girl.
didn't think about that. That's so interesting that the types of crimes are completely different. So
Yeah.
you're talking about like coordinated attacks with two perpetrators, bombs. What was
Mhm.
the other?
I think that
Knife?
it's more than one person, right? So
Yeah.
more than one person, or more likely to see bombings outside the United States, more likely to have a conspirator or co-conspirators outside the United States. And certainly, as you deal with in the UK and other countries, more likely to see knife attacks because of availability of guns, availability of knives. There's more availability of guns here, but it's just a different type of crime that occurs. A knifing is you think shooting somebody is bad? A knife, you have to be next to somebody to knife them. It's a very intimate crime. And to slice somebody open is a
Ooh.
very intimate, disgusting crime. And we don't see that very often in the States. We have seen it, but we don't see it very often.
Straight away, I'm thinking about the attacks that we've had in the Borough Market in London. That's exactly what happened. Why do you think the differences are with the amount of perpetrators? Is it the types of crime?
Yeah, I think in part it's the who's doing it and what's their motivation. So this is just my plain old FBI hat on from the time in the FBI working terrorism matters. If you're ideologically intended, you have an ideological intent to commit a violent act for your political or religious, political or religious reasons are the most popular ideological bents for committing crime. There's probably somebody else who's likely to do it with you because they're also politically or religiously aligned. And so you're inspired or directed, right? We've talked about lone gunmen before, and people say, oh, he's a lone gunman or loner, or lone wolf. I'm like, don't use that term. That's a terrorism term. Because you can either be directed by a criminal enterprise to do something. You can be inspired by a criminal enterprise, including another country or a criminal group to do it, like your gang directs you to do it, or you want to be one of those gang members, so you're inspired to be like them, or you do it on your own, and that's a lone actor who does it. So even when people talk about, oh, he's a lone wolf, it just means, from our interpretation, from a terrorism standpoint, that just means that it's a person who chooses to do it on his own. He's not directed by another, organization or country. Or so outside the United States, we see a lot more criminal activities that come to fruition. I would say it that way, that are politically or ideologically, religiously motivated in one way or the other. I think in the United States, another advantage that we have is that, like some countries, we have like the UK, we have a large population of law enforcement and intelligence officials who are looking to take those people offline before they commit a violent act. And as long as people are watching for someone, the classic, you can't take a backpack into the airport without it being searched. Didn't used to be that way. But we see those kinds of terrorist acts in more densely populated areas. Think about the Bataclan attack at the Bataclan. Lots of people in Paris, very condensed area, so you could do a lot of damage. So it's just different type of violence that I think we see in different countries, and that's really why I wanted to talk about today. Is I wanted to just talk to you about the similarities and the differences in a shooting that occurred recently in South Africa.
Yeah, we've never done a case in South Africa before. So
yeah, I think it's just interesting when you think about what we talk about violence in the United States or in the UK, and what kind of differences are very obvious, even in the basic information about this incident that occurred, recently in South Africa. So I have only so much information about it, but I want to share what I know. This is a shooting that happened in rural Eastern Cape Province. So the news stories, of course, were cut out of Johannesburg. And so I'm looking at a couple of news stories and the details that we can get so far on them, because the information that we have is that more than one gunman came to a complex where there were two homes and shot a number of people. So just right from there, complex with two homes, kind of different than what we see. You might have your parents live next door, but in this case, there's a more communal environment in this town. And that communal environment has a lot of people living together who are all related or living near each other who are all related. Higher risk and not unlike the kinds of firearms violence that they've seen before in South Africa. So that's kind of interesting in and of itself. So in this case, two different shooting locations, but right near each other. And in all, there were 17 people killed,
Wow.
which is a lot of people. The shooting happened on a Friday night. And they even have, video, security camera video that shows the shootings occurring in these two houses right in the same neighborhood in this rural homestead on the outskirts of the city. In all, there were 12 women, just to put the sad numbers to the table first, 12 women and one man killed in one house. 12 women and one man. And in the next house, there were 3 women and one man killed. So that is a lot of killing and not what we would normally see here.
And for context, who survived? Because it feels like that's targeted at the women, but I guess we need to get the fuller picture of who else was there.
Well, there were 4 women and a man and a baby, a 2-year-old. They all survived. But there could have been in another room in the house, right? Or out in the backyard, or, the same thing with the man. They're people who obviously weren't available to shoot, is what it seems like. The chances that they weren't shot out of intent are less likely. It's that there clearly was an intent to kill as many as they could, a mass shooting, as we would call it in the States. And there was an intent to kill as many as they could, and they didn't get to these 4 and the baby, which is really sad. Oh, and I said a 2-year-old, but you know what? I'm looking at my notes. It's a 2-month-old baby. So a tiny baby who was probably in one of the arms of one of those women,
Wow, okay.
This did just happen. So I don't have all the details. The subjects took off. Law enforcement's looking for them.
Do we know how many subjects?
No. I think it's 2, but they don't know for sure. And they do know that the family members who were all together were there for a particular ceremony, celebration, like a birthday or something. So they were there for a kind of a ceremonial incident. And so there was a reason that they were all together. And I don't know what that traditional ceremony was that they were celebrating. But as an investigator, I would say it was clearly a targeted act of violence against this family with the knowledge that you would inflict maximum injury to this family because you had something against this family, whether somebody was involved in criminal activity, which I'm not implying they were, but if somebody was involved in criminal activity and they were rivals, right? We see that sometimes in the States with rival gangs, where gang members will drive by somebody's house and shoot into the home where they know a rival gang member lives. And when they shoot sporadically, they just randomly shoot into a home, they often kill innocent people, children, siblings, whoever happens to be in the house visiting. And so in this case, some of that was going on at these people's houses. And obviously a couple of shooters knew, and they intentionally came to this house to do this violent act.
Talk to me about, you're looking at this as an investigator, as you say. What are the conclusions that you do draw from that? Because how did you come to the conclusion that it's targeted? What, as an investigator, makes you think that?
As a police investigator a long time, I would say this is a situation where it just kind of screams that somebody knew that they were all going to be gathered together. I mentioned they have video footage. They're going to know whether these individuals kind of, maybe potentially who they are from the videos, but also maybe what they look like or whether there are vehicles involved. There's going to be a lot of investigative leads that come in just from the gathering of the data. In addition to that, there was a person or two who was wounded but survived. The survivors saw and heard things.
Right.
And those people will be able to say, this is who it is. And law enforcement knows whose house it was. So who that person is who owns those compounds, the family members, what are their relationships in that community? Those are very relevant. Whether they are, like I said, nefarious, like criminal activities, or whether they're completely innocent, like somebody who, for instance, could be a member of the government, right, or a member of a business establishment, and there's a rival business establishment. But it also could be something that's more simple and sad, like rivalry over a romantic relationship, right? That they wouldn't grant me permission to marry that girl, so I'm going to take the family out, or something like that. But they're different than the crimes that we deal with in the United States. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of bring it up. Let me just mention a couple of other shootings that we tracked down. South Africa does have a high rate of violent crime compared to some other countries. But just as an example, in the last couple of years, when you think about the types of events, and I say how that's different than maybe the violence you might see or the violence that we might see. So in January 2023, more than one shooter killed 8 people at a birthday party. Right?
Oh my
So
God.
a family gathering, 8 people at a birthday party. Earlier in the year, a gunman stormed a house, gunmen, plural, stormed a house and killed 10 people at a homestead, right? Elsewhere, at least 19 were shot dead in multiple taverns, including in Johannesburg's Soweto township, by gunmen. So different types of violence, in that the gunmen have the weapons and they plan and they go to a location where an event is going on, where a family is gathering.
Yeah. The other thing that strikes me about that is that there's more people in one spot either at a home or at a gathering, like at a birthday or what have you, to be targeted.
Yeah. And if you're going to a birthday party, you know that date and you plan on it ahead of time. And like you said, there might be 4 people in the home or 10 people in the home on one day. But then during the party, there might be 20, very concentrated number. And so it's a planned type of violence. That's kind of scary. It's different type of violent crime than we see here in the States. Not unheard of by any means, but that I think it's a pattern that we would see there that we wouldn't see as much in the States, and certainly maybe not in the UK either.
Yeah. What could motivate you to want to wipe out an entire family? That's so
and
different motivation-wise.
That's a great point, right? Because that's what it is. No matter what your motivation is, generally that indicates a lot of times criminal activity. There's a criminal activity involved, because the idea from a criminal enterprise standpoint is, this family is a problem to us. We're competing with them, or they're interfering with our business. And it's not personal, it's just business.
Yeah. Just a little light familial genocide, essentially.
Exactly. When these
Mafia,
shootings occurred,
isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's a little closer to thinking about it from the mafia standpoint. One of the numbers that I thought was pretty interesting when I was looking this up is that in South Africa's population is about, according to this, 62 million. And the United States population is about 320 million. I don't know what the UK's population is. Yeah, just a little bit different there.
Oh, and you're going to ask me this. People ask me this all the time. I want to say
what's
60
the population?
million. I think it's close to South African population.
Are you making it up?
60 million. No, I feel like we had this. You put me on the spot one other time when we were talking to someone, and I was like, I don't know, but I think it's 60. But I don't know whether that is all of the United Kingdom or what. But let's go 60 million, and then everyone can show that they are so engaged in this show that they are like looking up the stats and fact checking me. I
love it. Okay, I'm going to check.
DM me.
Pull some numbers. DM me.
DM me and tell me what it is.
Okay, homicides. But, this is the classic pull something off the internet.
Yeah, go for it.
Homicides in England and Wales, 2023 to 24, 583. Similar to the previous rate. Homicide rate of 9.7 per million people. Right. So how many people are in the UK?
Okay. Yeah. How many people
let's
in the UK?
Find out. UK.
Oh, do we think I'm close? What's your bet?
I'm looking it up because I trust that you're right.
I'm sticking with 60. How many?
68 million. 68 million.
That's
pretty
by
good.
8.
That's the UK.
Quite a few.
68 million. That's better than most people would come up with. So,
but the irony being that, like, that's 8 million. That's more than double the population of New Zealand that I've completely ignored. It's quite a lot of people. Just for context, people.
Who knows where New Zealand is anyway? Let's be honest. Something like that. So 68 million people in the UK, 62 million people in South Africa. In the first 6 months of this calendar year in South Africa, they had 12,734 homicides. 12,000.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot.
So, yeah, remember I was just saying, in the 23-24 year in England and Wales, whatever that means, 583. It's probably a little bit different.
Slightly different, yeah.
Just a little bit. That includes London, Northwest, West Midlands, Southeast. Most common method of killing in your area is sharp instruments like knives, right? 40% of your homicides. So guns are not your thing there, right? As we know.
No. Right? Well, that brings me back to the South African case then. We're talking about weapons. Do we know if these were legally obtained or illegally obtained?
Oh, I think illegally obtained because there's not a lot of ability to get legal guns in South Africa. So as opposed to the United States, we have 400 million guns, most of them legally obtained. So most firearm deaths in the United States, whether intentional or self-inflicted, involve legally purchased guns.
Did you tell me what the comparative US stats were?
Oh, no, I did not. Oh, how lovely you asked. So, being a numbers geek, the United States has firearms deaths, probably about 45,000, 47, 48,000 a year. It seems like it should be an exact number. And there is, but it just depends on what year, right? But under 50,000, we hope, firearms deaths. 60% of those are self-inflicted gunshot wounds.
So what's the homicide rate? Give me
I'm going to make you do the math. I feel like I should stall a little bit and see if you can do the math and all this just for the entertainment value of it. I know I can't either. All right, here's what I know though. Here's what our Center for Disease Control and Prevention actually keeps track of the people who die by firearms in the United States, and 60% suicides. But the actual number of homicides is about somewhat under 20,000 a year.
Right.
Okay.
Compare that to South Africa, who in only 6 months.
6 months, right. So the numbers I have for the first 6 months of this past year, 12,734. So United States, 19,000 for the year, 12,000 in 6 months.
So presumably, double that. You're beating a country with 330 million people.
Yes, that's another part of it, right?
62 million, yeah.
Yeah, so if we were mathematicians, for you mathematicians listening in, you can please send Sarah a note that tells her what this is. But here's the math problem. We have, say, 320 million people in the United States and about 19,000 homicides a year with firearms. South Africa has 62 million people, and in their first 6 months had nearly 13,000 murders, homicides, most by firearms.
Well, I don't really know what the lesson there is, if it's that you've just, as we would say, polished a turd so that the US looks better.
That's what we're going to say. Yes. The sad part is that as bad as the firearms deaths are in the United States and the homicides in the United States, two things are valuable to know. South Africa ranks worse. Yay.
Yay. Not.
Yay. And I will tell you that I just saw some stats that I don't have all the details on, but I will say, stand by and let me make the stat up. No, I'm just kidding. Let me find the stat. I've got little crime trend data right here in front of me that I was just reading, that violent crime continues to drop in the United States. In 2022 to 23, a 12% decrease. 12% decrease in murder, not 10% decrease in rape, an 8% decrease in burglary. Why do we have crime in the United States? Because we have a 12% increase in motor vehicle larceny. But
really?
Yeah.
So lots of people stealing cars has gone up.
Not that you can see it, but if I was showing you this chart, which I'd love to show you, this is the crime rate in the United States for violent crime, which nobody else is seeing except Sarah, I guess, probably, unless somebody sees it.
You can tune in and look at the YouTube.
And I do have stats, but the violent crime rate in the United States has gone down since since I was a kid. In the 1970s and the 1980s, the United States was the most violent, and those numbers have gone down. Back in the 1970s, we had 16.3 deaths per every 100,000 people, violent crimes, and now we have 13. And it continues to go down every year, continues to go down.
That's good news. What I'm kind of piecing together from this is that America is good at spotting certain kinds of crime, and you've managed to get a lid on that. So the bombings, what do you take away from the stats?
Yeah, I think that, I guess maybe I'm always optimistic. I feel like we're making progress. And also it's a kind of a soup sandwich. We're always
Soup sandwich. What the hell is a soup sandwich? Oh my God. There's a new one for me. Is that an Americanism? It feels like it is.
Yeah, I guess
it's definitely got to be.
It is. It's kind of a soup sandwich. So, yeah, we're a federal government in 50 states and, thousands of counties and federal, state, local, tribal law enforcement and agencies. And, we're always shuffling the laws and the regulations and the rules, looking for the best, that's the best solution. So we add this kind of a gun law, and then we take away that kind of a gun law. In Texas, they just gave everybody concealed carry and open carry. You don't even have to have a license. You can just walk around with a gun on your hip, with the idea that maybe that'll make things safer. And so maybe we'll do something and we'll look up what's going on in Texas and other states. In people in the United States, they say, oh, California, they have really strict, crazy gun laws, and that creates a lot of problems. Well, the strict, crazy gun laws are like some of the oldest gun laws in the United States. They were passed, signed into law by Ronald Reagan, right, many years ago, and still in place. And they've served their own purpose. In Florida, they passed a law that's after the Parkland high school shooting that said every school has to have somebody with a firearm in it ready to go. Will that work? Won't it work? Yellow flag laws, red flag laws that didn't exist. Now for the last, less than 10 years, we have red flag laws and yellow flag laws have replaced. I think we're constantly changing the rules and the regulations, and we are a big country, and we can do that, and we can do it by piecemeal. When it comes to criminal activity, most of that is controlled at the local level. So that's at least 50 states, 50 sets of rules on what is murder, what is homicide, what is manslaughter, what is second-degree murder. That's all at the local level. So what's the law in Indiana is completely different than what's the law in Alaska. So it is kind of a soup sandwich. And I think that, it's hard to make generalizations about crime and law in the United States, except for to look in the big macro end and say, well, okay, when the agencies that report their criminal data, when the agencies report data to the federal government's Center for Disease Control and Prevention, what do we learn from that overall? When they report, their law enforcement reports their data to the FBI, which not all of them do, right? There's only a certain percentage of law enforcement agencies that do every year, and it's kind of the same ones because they have the mechanisms to do it. But when those communities and those law enforcement agencies report their crimes, do their crimes seem like they're going up or seem like they're going down? And we can look at, in general, about whether things are going better or worse. And, what we know right now is that the number of crimes in the United States continues to drop consistently, unless you own a car.
Exactly.
Yeah, actually, that was one of my more fun cases. I worked in the FBI is that we were working with a guy who was boosting cars. That's the term for it. Stealing.
Oh, yeah, I know boosting.
Yeah, he was boosting cars. And he was a source of ours. So because there was this drug dealer who owned a car lot and he wanted, this is a little bit off track. This is a little bit off track, listeners.
I'm in.
There's a car dealer. There's a car dealer who was really a drug dealer, but he was using the car dealership as a cover because he was transporting drugs from south of the border to north into the United States and up to the north. And he would do that with his cars, but he was also trying to sell cars on the lot because, anytime he could make money. So he would convince people in the bar across the street where he and his buddy were bartenders to have their cars stolen so they could report it stolen and then collect the insurance money and then come buy a car from him, from his used car lot.
Oh my God.
It's very enterprising, right? Very enterprising.
Yeah.
Okay. But what he didn't know is that the guy that he was employing to boost the cars worked for us. So
oh no.
He would have somebody, it was great. He'd have somebody boost the car and then our guy would call and say, hey, I just stole a Lincoln Continental. And we'd say, great, can you drive it to our lot? And then we'd meet him at our impound lot and he'd park there. And then we'd like flip through the glove box and we look at the guys and we find out who the guy is who had his car stolen. And then we call his insurance company and say, hey, you're going to get a claim for this car. Stand by because don't pay it because this guy had somebody steal the car for him because of this other big, huge enterprise. And so case was going on when that movie Gone in 60 Seconds came out, which was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever seen that. And it was a movie about a guy who steals cars and he said he could steal it in 60 seconds. And our guy would always say, 60 seconds. If you're 60 seconds on the scene, you are slow. It was great.
So good. It makes me just think we could just do like a whole season on just tapping into the stories that you've got of arrests you've done.
But the bottom line is that crime in the United States is down. And we are good at solving a lot of types of crime. But there are just some inherent risks, and people steal cars because there's a market for them. So motor vehicle thefts, watch your car.
You know what you might need to do is just check where that guy is. That was, is he out of jail maybe? Maybe he's back on the game.
Yeah, he might have might have a good car if I need a car. Yeah. Oh, shh. I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that.
All right. Well, that's taken us on quite the journey. We've gone from South Africa to car dealerships in the US.
I do think that it really speaks to the idea of what is your threat and where is your threat? And I think that's, being in all seriousness, you have to understand that, the risks that you have in the country that you live in the neighborhoods that you live in. But I do think the difference is that we have so many more opportunities to prevent our 20,000 homicides in the United States. It just requires us to be brave. And to see something and say something. So maybe that's the takeaway for today. I would ask everybody to be a little more brave and be confident that you can participate in ending violence before it occurs.
Thank you for joining us on Stop the Killing. Remember, these conversations aren't just important, they're necessary. If you're ready to dive deeper into the issues we cover, Catherine's book, Stop the Killing, and also How to Talk About Guns with Anyone are available now at catherineschweit.com. Stop the Killing is proudly produced by Sarah Ferris Media. For more award-winning podcasts like Conning the Con and Watching Two Detectives, visit sarahferrismedia.com. As an independent podcast, we rely on your support to keep these critical discussions alive. If you value our work, please consider supporting us on patreon.com/stopthekilling or by simply subscribing on Apple Podcasts now. Not only will you help us to continue this mission, but you'll also get early access to ad-free episodes and exclusive content that takes a deeper look into unfolding incidents. And don't forget, Stop the Killing is a team effort. You can make a difference by leaving a review on Apple and sharing this podcast with others. Together, we can keep pushing these conversations forward. Thank you for being part of this journey. Stay safe, stay informed, and let's continue to stop the killing.